I'm so happy to be with my friend, Lori Wildenberg. We get to see each other in real life at D6 conferences, family conferences, and others. And she has this wonderful book, Grandparents Make Grand Partners, How to Have an Internal Impact on Your Grandchild's Life. Lori, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Oh, Arlene, I am thrilled to be here and to be with you. I love it.
Yes. We're going to talk about how adult children can get along better with their parents, how to involve grandparents if you feel like, why aren't the grandparents doing more? And then also how to say, hey, grandparent, you're doing too much. So we're going to go talk about all those things. How many grandkids do you have and your children? Give us that.
Well, we have 5, and I'd actually like to say 6 because the 6th one is due in October.
Yes.
So we're so excited. We've got 2 grandgirls 3 grandgirls and soon to be 4 grandgirls and 2 grandsons. And one of the grandsons is thinking this is getting quite unfair that they're outnumbered.
That's hilarious. That's adorable. And you have 2 children, one that lives close to you and one that's further away from you. Is that right?
We have 4. We have 4 kiddos.
Goodness. I gave you way too few children. That's awful.
So we've got 3
of course.
live close to us and one in San Diego.
I was thinking of who has the grandkids. That's where my brain was going. Yes.
Yep. And that's right. So
yes.
Out of the 4, 3 are married and then 2 currently have the kiddos and the other one is expecting soon.
Yeah.
But I would count that one. So
yes. In your book, Grandparents, you realize as you're reading it, like, wait a minute, grandparents are like a force. They are a third of our population in the United States. They have an average of 5 to 6 grandkids, as you do. And then they're no longer gray haired, as you are showing us right now. If anyone's watching on Spotify or YouTube, so the average age now is 50 years for women and a few years older for men. And generally between the ages of 40 to 60 is kind of what we're talking about. So, these are pretty young. The whole idea of like a senior citizen, very old, gray-haired grandma that smells funny, like that is not the grandma of today, is it?
No. And we want to be involved. When, people in my generation were raising kids, we wanted to be involved in those kids' lives. We were probably more involved than our parents were with us. And so we have taken that same passion. And now you see many, not all, but many grandparents highly involved in their grandkids' lives. Sadly, some have fallen into what I would call the retirement lie of thinking, I've paid my dues and now it's time just to be all about me. And there's nothing wrong with, of course, pursuing personal endeavors and having the time to do that. That's really awesome. Yeah. Yet we don't want to forget about the great call that God has put on grandparents' lives. And that is to be a part of the grandchildren's lives, to pass on a legacy of faith. And boy, it's a command in Deuteronomy 4:9. It's a command for us grandparents to be involved in that way. So I'm very passionate about it. And Arlene, you are so right. We are a different breed than our folks were. And that can come with positives and negatives, of course.
Yes. Let's go to that. So if you have a mom or a dad and they are in this leisure lifestyle, like I have paid my dues, I am not just taking one cruise, I am taking one a month. I'm unavailable for babysitting if I'm local. I'm not willing to come out and visit you. How, to help out. How would you reach that grandparent? What should that person say to try to nudge that grandparent to be more involved in the kids' lives?
Boy, yeah, that is an issue. That is one of the issues that parents face with the grandparents. And when I was working on the book, I did interview many that had that particular situation. And what I think the first thing is to assume the best. That's what I would start with.
Yeah.
Perhaps they don't know that you want them involved. That is a possibility. And to extend the invitation to say, boy, the kids love you so much and we love you and you are an important, critical part of the family. We sure would like to have you be, we'd like to see you more. We'd like to have you, be with us a little more and be more specific about the invitation. There are some grandparents that hold back because they don't want to interfere.
Yeah.
And they're afraid that that's what they're doing. For the grandparents that really do understand that their adult children want them involved and they don't perhaps want to be the babysitter, that's okay, because they don't have to do that. What they can do, though, is still participate in going to the games and family dinners and things like this. And to have the conversations about what that role is going to look like. Because what I've also discovered is the grandparents typically have an idea of what grandparenting is going to look like prior to those grandkids coming. And their adult children also have a view, and they don't necessarily mesh.
They may not match.
Yeah. So it's time to have the conversation on what that's going to look like. And it's really important, and have it with respect and kindness. And I think if you can start with assuming the best and implementing the respect and the kindness, I do believe that you will reach some sort of agreement in terms of what's going to work for everyone involved.
Yeah, I'm seeing, like, if you are pregnant with your first baby and then you have this conversation with your in-laws, with your parents, what are your expectations of being a grandparenting? And then they ask you, what are your expectations of us as a grandparent? And you kind of talk through that. That sure does help a lot. And then if you are already in it, your grandkids are 12 and 15. I mean, it's still never too late to have a dinner together, a Zoom call together, or something to say like, hey, how can we help each other? What are your expectations? What are our expectations, from hearing this podcast from this moment forward? That's a conversation. And as you were talking, Lori, it made me realize the attitude is so important. If you are feeling like you're not here enough, you should be here more for us. Then as a grandparent, you're like, I don't want to be guilted into something.
Yeah.
But if it is like, hey, we love you and we really enjoy when you're around, we miss you. Is there any chance you could come over, like next spring?
That sits a little differently,
right? That's totally different. It's the exact same. And it's reversed too when the grandparents say to us kids, why don't you ever come see us?
Yeah.
You never come see. That doesn't sit well with the adult kids either. No. And it's much nicer if it's, hey, we miss you. Let's have some time together. Like, that whole demeanor makes all the difference in the world.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. What about the grandparent who is too involved, right? Let's say they just say too much. They're giving way too much advice. How do you approach this? I think it's easier to approach it if it's your parents, because you could be like, Mom, Dad, please, enough. But if it's your in-laws, so give us advice for if it's your parent that's too talkative, and then if it's your in-law that's too talkative.
Well, I think it is up to the adult child of the offending parent to be the one to say something. Yeah. There will always be more grace for the child, the adult child. There just will be. And it will just come across so much better. So first of all, that's where you need to start. And I think being direct rather than dropping hints is a little kinder. It's, speaking those expectations, and it's better to speak it. So for instance, we had a situation where, what my 8-year-old grandson, Arlene, he is really good at football. I mean, he is really good. And I'm not just saying it because I'm his Mimi. He is really good. And I'm going to say I'm probably one of the biggest fans.
Right.
And I'm not a quiet one.
And you're probably right. Yeah.
I'm so excited about, when he gets an interception or when he makes a touchdown, whatever, I am all about it. Well, apparently this has been a little embarrassing for my
is so funny.
My adult son. And, he's also the coach. So that kind of,
how funny.
Yes. So he wanted me to tone it down a little. And so he called me and, we had a nice little conversation. And then he goes, "Hey, Mom, can I ask a favor of you? Could you kind of tone it down a little bit at the games and, maybe more privately,
yes,
compliment and encourage his son." And you know what? That was really good because I was only thinking all I was thinking about what was happening on the field. I didn't have the perspective of anything else, right? My son had the bigger perspective, and he really didn't want all that huge attention, and he said that to me, and he said it in a kind and funny way, right? He wasn't angry. He was just like, "Hey, Mom, take it down a couple notches.
Could you do me a favor?" Which is a really nice way to say that. Yes.
Yeah. And that I received that. And I think, if your adult child can come to you with gentleness and respect, for sure.
Yeah.
Which is what my son did. If they can come to you like that, it is, of course, better received. I mean, everyone receives a correction better if it is done with love. Yeah. So I think that is the best way that we can go about working through a conflict. It doesn't have to be big. It can just be something that just needs to be said, and then it's over with.
Yeah. Our friend Jim Burns, he talks about how unsolicited, when it comes to adult kids, unsolicited advice feels like criticism. Mm-hmm. So when grandma and grandpa have this advice, you really should dress her warmer. It's a cold day. Yeah. It feels like, okay, you're criticizing me because you think I do not know how to dress my own child. Yes. So if your parent or in-law is giving a lot of this unsolicited criticism, what might a conversation sound like?
Yeah, I think from the adult child, I mean, even just speaking it, "Hey, Mom, hey, Dad, when you said blah, blah, blah to my wife or to my husband, I know you didn't mean it to come across whatever." Again, assume the best, right?
Yeah.
"You didn't mean it to come across this way. I'd like you to know that it was received differently, and partly because the in-law is an in-law, right? Didn't grow up in your home." And usually that's where the rub is. It's more often than not with the in-laws, just because they don't have the history with you, and they're not going to have as much grace. That's just how it works. With your adult child, sometimes that can get pretty hard because there are patterns that you notice. Like, let's say you were raised with a lot of that guilt. Many of us were, right? And so that is a hot spot. Nobody wants that. And again, I think to be direct about it, because being indirect, you don't know if the message is received or not and how it's received. And I think you just say, that particular comment felt uncomfortable to me, or it was hurtful. I think to be able to say it, and it does require some bravery, but it is the best thing. We have to have really good and effective communication with one another, and not to be passive aggressive regarding the way that we talk to people. "Oh, I'm glad you showed up today," or these sort of things. We don't we don't want that. That sits badly, and it can breed a lot of resentment, and maybe even anger is sort of stirred. And there's no reason for it when we can be kind and direct.
Yeah. I just read there's a proverb, many of them, to have long life is to control the tongue. So it's true. We have to control this tongue of ours.
Yes.
I want to talk soon. I want to ask you about how to involve grandparents when they live far away, some ideas and tips on that. But I want to ask you to share a little bit about your daughter, Courtney, who has struggled with gender identity issues. And in many times in our culture today, it's like if we disagree with someone, we separate from them. Like, adult kids are being told, hey, your parents, if they look at them, they believe this about God, or they believe this about politics, or they believe this about raising your kids. You should cut them off because they're toxic for you, and this is very so hurtful to families. So tell us from your own life how you have navigated, I disagree with you, but I love you, and we still are in close relationship with one another.
Yeah. Respect is really the bottom line here, to be able to be respectful of one another. And Courtney is an adult, and we respect the fact that these are her decisions, and we may not agree, and that's okay. My husband and I, Tom, we are very close regarding the way we view life, but we are not exactly the same. And we are able to give each other grace space, right? To be able to have a different thought or a different opinion and still love each other in the midst of it. Courtney used to say to me, one of her lines was earlier on in some of her journey. She would say that you don't accept me. And then I would say, I accept and love you unconditionally. I don't agree with you. And that's okay. We can agree to disagree and to have those conversations. And then sometimes to not have the conversation. If Courtney and I are going out, she might say to me, hey, Mom, we're just going to have fun today. Meaning, I know you've got me alone and you're thinking this is your chance to say what you want to say, but I'm telling you, I just want to have fun with you today. So when you can continue to work on building the relationship, building the bridge, ultimately, whatever the struggle, whatever the prodigal, wayward type of struggle is, it honestly is not against the parent. It is really pushing up against the Lord and faith. And if we can be a bridge where we can continue to strengthen our relationship in the midst of the heartache and the hardship, we can also be the bridge that helps draw the child closer to the Lord. Now, it's not true in every case. We've been able to work through this and have these conversations. There are situations where, sadly, you know of them too, Arlene, and I'm sure you work with parents like I do that have this going on, where their child or their adult child has decided that they are going, and it goes both ways. It isn't just that way. It seems to be more typical, the adult child cutting off the parent, but it also goes the other way. And they've believed the lie that if you don't agree with me, or if you can't line up with this way of thought, you are out of my life. And, that is not the way of the Lord. He wants, truth is important, right? Truth is critical, and so is grace.
Yeah.
We need both. And we need to meet each other where we are with truth and grace. I don't need to compromise my convictions in order to have a relationship with my daughter, but I have to work very hard at communicating that.
Yeah.
And she does this, she has to do the same. So I think again, the communication and the
Yeah.
respect
Respect.
are really huge.
Yeah. And give the respect even before it's given to you, like that you
Yes.
respect first, that you don't wait for you to act in a certain way and then I'll respect you, but I'm going to
Right.
respect you. And maybe for all of us listening, that we renew that respect in our parents, even if they're bugging us right now or that we don't agree with them, but we renew that we will honor them and respect them. You know, you don't have to agree all the time, and that's
Right.
okay.
And in the challenging moments, I mean, love shows up. I mean, there's no test of love or of faith if everything's easy. You know, I think love is really tested in some of these situations that have more tension, perhaps. And when my kids were teenagers, one of my lines that I used to say, you know, when they maybe would have a little attitude, I would say to them, but it has to be true if you want to use the line. I would say, I treat you with respect. I expect respect in return. And I think if sometimes that needs to be verbalized, you know, but really to start out with respect, I think is quite critical.
Yeah. And to live it out. You can't say that
Yes.
sentence if you didn't treat the other person with respect,
Exactly.
right? And this has to do with your spouse, your children, the grandparents, everybody.
Yes.
Wow, that's really good. I love also what you said, what Courtney said, like, we're just here to have fun. So that really could be for the spouse. If you guys are having a hard time, maybe it's just like, hey, let's just go out and have fun. For the kids that you're having tension with, you know what? Let's lay it all aside and let's just go have some fun for 2 hours. And that
Yes.
could be really, with grandparents, that could be so, so beautiful.
Well, you're so right because, you know, I mean, your Happy Home podcast, right?
Yeah.
Happiness draws people together. Happiness is a good thing. You know, it's not obviously the ultimate thing, but it is a very good relationship builder.
Yes.
And to do the fun, happy things are really important in a relationship.
Yeah. What are some ways that you have stayed in touch with your grandkids that are out of town? And what advice would you have for, you know, grandparents who live states away to stay in touch with their grandkids?
Yeah. You know, it's challenging because we only have an hour time difference between Colorado and San Diego, you know, between where we live and where three of our grandkids live. And that hour difference, it makes a difference. So you really have to, in some cases, like in ours, you have to sort of plan it out a little bit. And you try to remember life is crazy when they have those little ones. There's barely a minute to have a hot cup of coffee, right? I mean, life is unfolding second by second, and somebody's got an owie, and then the next person has just slipped on some Legos. I mean, it's just like constant chaos. So, you know, if you can set up a time, and we've had to do this just bit by bit versus like, I know some grandparents say this is our standing time and that works for them. That doesn't seem to work in our case. So what we do is we'll say, you know, we'll call you in a few minutes if it's, you know, if it works for you, and we'll do the FaceTime, so that they have a minute or two to sort of organize themselves, and then we talk. That has worked for us, but other families, a real scheduled time helps. The FaceTime, I think, is really important. I recall when our oldest San Diego grandson, he was the only one at the time. We had gone out to visit, and he was taking a nap, and my daughter said, well, why don't you go and get him? And I thought, oh gosh, he might freak out. Like, he hasn't seen me in person in his life for like a really long time. You know, it'd only been a few months, but in his life, that was a long time. Yeah. And I didn't want to have the first interaction to be bad. And she goes, it'll be okay. She was 100% right. Oh. I went up and I got him. And he knew me because of that FaceTime, and I'd been there before, but that was a long time ago in his life. And he
Oh,
raises his arms for me to pick him up. Oh my gosh. So don't underestimate the power of the FaceTime.
they
That's
recognize you. And that is the screen time that is really lovely because it's
yes,
a real person talking to
yes,
you in real time. And
yes,
that one it is Arlene approved. It is all
yes,
approved.
yes, yes.
Let's talk about that a second. What if the grandparents have a different like screen time philosophy than the parents? And obviously this can translate to any kind of parenting philosophy that's different. What
Yeah.
advice do you have?
Well, for the grandparents, I would advise you to set your ideas aside and follow what the parents are saying. Um,
Now all the adult kids are about to forward this podcast.
yeah,
to
right.
their parents.
Exactly. Exactly. But we need to be respectful of, the screen time, of the food, and the gifts. These are things that I think we need to be very aware of. And
Yeah.
if you do have a different idea, I think, again, communication and saying, hey, we've got this amount of time to be together. And they were really looking forward to what one of my grandkids calls funny or silly videos, which is good. It's almost like, that physical humor where somebody gets bonked with something or falls and he thinks it's hysterical. And he and my husband just laugh about this. And that's a relationship builder thing. So it, probably doesn't necessarily fit under the screen time. So if you can talk about the reason behind something that you might want them to have an opportunity to see, that I think that's important too.
Mhm.
And for the parents to maybe consider or have a little flexibility as well, that's okay as well. But I do think first and foremost, the grandparents really need to follow the rules of the screen time. Because Arlene, this whole screen thing has changed families and relationships. And it's a big, huge issue, which wasn't when I was raising kids. It wasn't nearly what it is now.
Yeah. And grandma and grandpa's house can really be a haven where it's like, oh, sorry, we bake cookies here and we read books and we look for little worms in the ground. Like it could really be this beautiful, different place.
Yes. To find something where they're connecting.
Yeah. My last thought here is, I remember being in the grocery store and I was like picking onions and I was overhearing these two gentlemen talking and they're saying, oh, my wife doesn't want to retire. Why is that? Well, she retires. She has to watch the grandkids and she doesn't want to do that because it's so much work. Now he's right because he knows that like, oh, when my wife retires, she's going to have to watch the kids, 8 hours a day. And she just doesn't have the physical energy for it. And we hear this, so many grandparents having, they don't have the physical strength that they did when they did this the first time around. And then now you've got all these kids. So how can we as parents be more appreciative of what our parents have done? Because many times we take them for granted.
Yeah, I think, don't we all love a thank you? And to say, hey, you guys are really great grandparents and we love the relationship you have. To really talk about that. And again, that role is so important to discuss because those expectations, why aren't they having that conversation? She's working so that she doesn't have to that's ridiculous. Have the conversation, right?
Yes.
So they need to talk and to say, hey, you know what? My limit is 2 hours.
Right. Yes.
And that's okay, and sometimes you do find that it is probably harder in some cases, but there is so much joy to be had that perhaps those endorphins get a little revved up and you find that you do have more energy, but really, I think the conversation and to be able to say, hey, I've got some mobility issues. This is tough for me, but I can totally do a couple of hours. Something like that, to be specific about boundaries, but to do one task to avoid another rather than just have the conversation, I think, that's a little, is not very effective, shall we say.
That's right. Oh, so as we close, any parting thoughts? Actually, I want you to talk very briefly just about, grandparents aren't just like, oh, that's nice. They'll help us for an hour and give us a break. Like, that's not, like, you're so much more than that.
Yes.
Just give us that little glimpse of the power of a grandparent in a child's life.
Well, what I've discovered, Arlene, is a child needs 4 to 6 adults in their life to really have a healthy outlook, a healthy growing up. And this is what the Lord says, and I had mentioned this at the very beginning in Deuteronomy 4:9. Only be careful and watch yourselves closely. So, okay, be good role models, right?
Yeah.
So that you do not forget the things your eyes have seen or let them fade from your heart as long as you live. Tell your story. Tell your faith story. And if it needs a little editing, edit it, right? You don't have to tell every last little detail, but tell how you came to know and love the Lord, or what God did in your life that particular day. Have those conversations. Teach them to your children and to their children after them. It is a command from the Lord. And those are such fun conversations to have. I've talked about, I had this turtle growing up, and I called her Mary Jo, and I accidentally sprayed her with a hot hose. The hose was sitting outside, and I scalded her. And I was mortified. And I went into my mom. I was so upset. And she said, well, you need to pray for Mary Jo. And so I prayed, and slowly those little eyes opened and she was okay. And that's a story that I tell my grandkids so that they know that prayer is important and that God cares about the turtle,
the creatures.
And he cares that I care about that. So tell your stories. And I think to encourage, for the adult children listening, to encourage their parents to tell those stories because it may not occur to them. And I think then you have permission. Now, again, not permission to tell the story about when your adult child, who's their dad, had a party when you weren't at home. That's not the story you tell, right? You tell the uplifting stories about the Lord, or the uplifting stories about their parent. And in that way, you'll strengthen relationships and hopefully draw them to the Lord.
Yeah, it's so good. I love that. The power of the story, even for the little turtle. Lori, help us know a little bit more about your book. And the book is called Grandparents Make Grand Partners, and how people can find out more about you.
Yes. So you can find the book on any online shop or in a brick and mortar store. If it's not on the shelves, it most likely is, but if it's not on the shelves, you can ask for it. You can find me at LoriWildenberg.com, LoriWildenberg.com. As you know, I write because we've been talking about the book, but also do a lot of speaking, which I have the great pleasure of doing many events, actually this past year with Arlene. That's been really fun. And then also I do parent and family coaching. So I would love to be a resource for you if you are looking for help with your child or your grandchild regarding prodigal issues or mental health or discipline or relationship type stuff. So you can find me there. And of course, I'm all over Facebook, Lori Wildenberg, and also on Instagram.
And we'll have those links in the show notes. Thank you, Lori, so much for your time and your wisdom for us today.
Thanks, Arlene. It has been a great pleasure to be with you, my friend.